My name's David Leavitt. In 1970, I got my first English Bulldog, and he was a great dog. His body did not live up to his spirit. He lived a normal lifespan for a Bulldog, but he was a huge character, and I showed him in AKC confirmation shows. Uh, I got the book, The Complete English Bulldog by Colonel Bailey Haynes, and it has a selection of early Bulldog art. And I saw my ideal dog there. So I decided to breed back to a dog with the looks of the Old English Bulldog, pre 1835, when bull baiting was made illegal. Uh,
Hmm.
Virtually all the bulldogs of that period were working dogs. And obviously a healthier shape than the modern bulldog. They had a tail. They obviously weren't born cesarean, and they were bred to catch a bull or bear by the nose and hold on. I didn't want the old temperament, and I started with my English bulldog and a pit bull bull mastiff bitch that was bred for boar hunting in Northern California. And I was living in San Francisco when I got her. So that's what I started with: half bulldog, quarter pit bull, quarter bull mastiff. She was a crossbred dog, and to that their progeny, I bred an American bulldog, and I started four unrelating line breeding schemes with the same ratio of dogs: half English bulldog, 1/6 pit bull, 1/6 bull mastiff, 1/6 American bulldog. Um, so I lost two of those lines to genetic problems, epilepsy and hip dysplasia. So I got down to two lines. It worked out to eight unrelated dogs that I started my breeding scheme with. So um, I worked on it for 24 years, got very little help. Interesting, I got in touch with one of the brothers who started the Argentine Doggo, and got to ask him how he got them breeding true to form when you started with so many breeds. And his secret was cousins. He had a lot of human cousins, and he put the dogs out with them, and he still controlled them. My problem was when I got people started who I would hope would help me. After a couple of years, they felt they knew more, and they didn't want to X-ray hips. From the beginning, I X-rayed hips, and so after virtually 50 years, we've gotten the hip scores up for the dogs. Uh, Now we require hips, elbows, and back x-rays. And we've recently started requiring genetic testing before we get breeding approval. So, so the dogs are bred for health and also temperament. I want a friendly dog. I think any of these dogs can have the drive to work. And we've had dogs that have done search and rescue. We have the first bulldog that's been through the Canadian military program. Um, we've had dogs that got Schutzhund, IPO, BH, um, and we have dogs that are national weight pull champions in Europe. They pull uh, at a lower level there than here, but we've had dogs with it pulled very respectably here too. Uh, I am not pushing protection work because of laws in Europe, and so we have not been pushing protection work because of that. Americans just don't want a health screen before breeding, so I have very few American breeders. Most of my breeders are in Europe now, and I have a wonderful group. I personally have had rescue dogs since 1990. And for me, it's a dream come true getting the help now that I really needed in the beginning. And my breeders are doing all the hard work, and the dogs have been continually looking better. I'm super happy with the way the dogs look now. I quit breeding myself when I had finally achieved a dog with the looks that I wanted and the temperament I wanted. You know, I'd gotten the legs longer, healthier, more normal shape. And right now, my European dogs and the dogs in this country are matching the old artwork, which is uh, which is really the scale for me on success or failure.
Mhm.
So that's the dog program in a nutshell. My the dogs have changed and improved conformation and the temperaments too. Uh, my breeders are doing such great work, and now we have dog training has come so far since when I started, and our training begins with socializing the day of birth, and
Mhm.
I highly recommend puppy culture for anybody breeding dogs. Um, Before puppy culture was a super dog program developed for sensory stimulation for military dogs. It was a U.S. program, and now puppy culture has taken over from that. And the critical period for puppies is before up to 16 weeks. So the early work really can set the temperament for the dogs.
Mhm.
So uh, dogs are my life. I've been training hard for the last 12 years. I have a wonderful mentor, and you know, I've been training in agility, obedience, rally. I have a little rescue dog who's got 4 titles, and you know, she's a dog of a lifetime for me. And I was walking shelter dogs when she was surrendered. I said, "Beautiful head on that dog." It looked like a little 17-pound pit bull.
Mhm.
And started crying and said, "Where do I surrender her?" And she was 2 and had never been to a vet, never had a good meal, was in rough physical shape, chronic bowel syndrome, and uh, and she moved from a really bad neighborhood in Riviera Beach to Palm Beach and had a house of her own and her first bed and toys, and she's got a lot of drive and super trainable, and um, I just loved seeing dogs and handlers advance. Currently, I'm training um, people who rescued dogs and their shelter dogs at the big shelter here in West Palm, the county shelter. And every Saturday morning, I'm training there and love to work dogs. You know, sure. I mean, I like to start with a friendly dog and teach them who to bite. So
Mhm.
So, because most people don't control their dogs enough to
Mhm.
make a mistake, I want it to be on the friendly side.
Right.
But a good decoy can get most dogs working. Uh, again, it's a problem for me because of laws in Europe,
Right.
and they just want any excuse to outlaw bull breeds, and it's
Right.
happened in Germany, and there've been problems with old English bulldogs being seized in Germany.
Oh, okay.
Other countries that they don't allow any percentage of pit bull, no matter how far back. So it's a problem. They
Right.
also a number of countries don't allow e-collars.
Mhm. Right. Yeah.
In training, we've come so far, and from when I started in the beginning, Keeler was the gold standard for dog training, and I cringe to think the things we did in his name and following
Mhm.
his direction. Personally, I don't think he was as rough on dogs as what he recommended in his book. I know people that trained with him back in the day, and he did great with movie work, and he was a major trainer for the Second World War. You know, if you have 100,000 dogs to train, you have to use different techniques than you can
Right.
training one dog at a time. But training has come so far, and it's very interesting now to see what's going on. That Karen Pryor did a book which started a movement where you don't tell the dog no.
Mhm.
It's happening with dogs and happening with children, and you can teach a dog to do tricks without having a no. But when the pressure's on, I think that they can't take the pressure of big distraction. If
Mhm.
you don't have a no. And the big dividing line is now how much punishment to use in dog training.
Right.
You use a leash correction and a lot of them and strong ones. And and some of that, if it's not done right, it doesn't build teamwork. And what you need in dog training is a team. And it should be like a dance team with one leading and one following. And most dog problems are because the dog is leading and not the owner.
Hmm.
So, uh, it's very interesting. There were only two ways of training animals until recently, operant and classical. And operant is reward and punishment. And classical is clicker training, where you use mainly a sound and then reward afterwards, Pavlovian style. Do it 10 times, quick treat, and then after 10 times, you pick a dog's behavior and click and treat it. So for my dog to put her toys away into a basket, you start in small steps, and the dog looks at the toy, quick treat. Then you increase your criteria, the performance that you will reward. And so the dog has to look at it longer, quick treat. Then it has to look at it and take a step towards it, quick treat. Stand over it, quick treat. Put mouth on it, quick treat. Pick it up, quick treat. And you can develop a dog that presents a lot of behaviors so that you can pick what you want. And it's it's interesting to see the protection guys and service dog trainers discovering shaping behavior with a clicker. And so now there's a new kind of training called social training, developed by a graduate student in Hungary.
Hmm.
It's also called uh, Do As I Do. And she discovered that dogs will mimic your behavior. So it's interesting to see the tests. Uh, it's also called Copy This, and they have tests. And you put your dog on a sit, stay. You say, copy this, and you do something like walk across the room and ring a bell 2 times, a hanging bell. You come
Hmm.
back, dog, assume your position, and say, do it. And the dog goes over and rings the bell twice.
Wow.
So, so now there's a third kind of training for animals. Very interesting. And it's funny because gorillas and chimpanzees that have virtually the same genes as we do. When you point, they won't look where you point. And it's funny, dogs will look where you point. It's uh it's called puppy culture.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Super Dog, which I'm more familiar with, starts on I believe day 2, and you take the puppies and you hold them in different positions just for 1 or 2 seconds. You hold them on their back, you hold them head down, you rotate them, you put them on a damp rag. It's sensory stimulation. And in the military, in the research that went along with it, they found that dogs that are handled this way at a young age, their brain grows in a more complex fashion, and the military wanted it to have increased working ability. So puppy culture takes it farther, exposing them to noises in the proper way and different things which make them much better socialized when they're older.
Hmm.
So this is a very common problem in all dogs.
Hmm.
Some dogs, they get jumped on once and their temperament flips. My best friends have a dog like that was fine until it got beat up by 2 standard poodles. And now it starts the aggression before it gets jumped on. So there are a couple of techniques to use. Uh, Patricia McConnell is a wonderful trainer, and she has booklets on all training problems, and she's got one on feisty Fido. And what she recommends is a real strong watch cue, where you say watch, and you start it with a high value treat up by your nose, and you say watch, and when the dog's eyes gaze comes to you, you give a positive marker and then food right away. And and you teach them to look at your face. You
Mhm.
start with luring with the food, and then as quickly as possible, you go to not luring, but using the food to reward. And you can get such a strong watch command that you can take an aggressive dog and walk it right by another dog, and it'll just keep looking at you. Um, you know, timid dogs actually can be harder to get
Mhm.
over fears. A lot of aggressive dogs, it's coming from a place of fear too, and it's not true aggression. Um, so, alpha roll is a huge mistake. Uh, when the dog appears to relax, it's not relaxed, it's just playing dead. Uh,
Mhm.
just want you to stop holding it down. So, alpha roll is 40 years behind the time, and anybody who's doing that shouldn't be training dogs. For guys, it's just real attractive to manhandling the dog and then having them relax, but it doesn't solve the problem, and it doesn't for dogs that it temporarily solves it. It doesn't permanently solve it. You know, some dogs, it's just a problem of the dog being the leader, and so the dog makes the decisions. So
Mhm.
basic obedience, I really like that
Mhm.
it changes that, and just like a dance team, one's got to be the leader, and in basic obedience and expecting a high level of performance, it changes, and the person becomes the leader, and a lot of dogs and a lot of aggressive dogs relax once they know they're being protected.
Mhm.
So, your management is working for you probably. And, with McConnell's technique, she has a couple of other things she does for management. She sees a problem coming, you- and you practice this with no problem. But when you see a dog coming, or what's worse is a dog comes from around a corner and all of a sudden you're presented with a dog, you do a 180-degree turn and rapidly go the other direction. And you practice that with no distraction there, so that it's automatic. You may use a cue like turn, and you say turn and do a 180 and a few quick steps. The dog's used to doing it, and when faced with a dog, all of a sudden you do a turn and a few steps and get away from it quick. Uh, yeah, I was at an event this week with 2,000 people, Walk for the Dogs at our wonderful private shelter here in West Palm holds Peggy Adams. And out of the 2,000, I saw a handful of dogs that were under control. Um, Virtually none of the people were aware of their dogs. The last thing that's said before most dog fights is, "My dog is friendly." You cannot trust other people. You can't trust their dogs.
Yeah.
And with my little dog, I just say, "My dog's not friendly," and I put her on a sit and stay and let the people go by. It's very frustrating. I talk, you can't trust other people's dogs. So, they're wonderful training programs, just basic obedience, uh, family dog classes. And, they'd be especially good for you to have other dogs around. You keep 10 feet between the dogs, but to get them used to listening to you around dogs. And then when there's a problem, you put your dog on a sit, and the dog is not it's not that you told him don't attack this other dog. You told him to sit, and sit means sit no matter what.
Mhm.
So uh, he's got to sit there and have a solid sit. And when there's a problem, it's the problem is he's breaking the sit, breaking the stationary position. And so basic obedience is wonderful, and this stuff is simple. It's just bringing them along those steps. Usually people skip steps and they expect too much, and you just go slower. And your dog may have trouble with loose leash walking. Most dogs do, and there are techniques to get that and rapidly get that. And the first thing is by not looking at your dog when you're trying to heel, but looking forward, shoulder square, watching the dog in your peripheral vision and move out. And instead of you having your behavior shaped by what the dog is doing, the dog's behavior should be shaped by your movement. So that you march out, no matter what the dog's doing, and he will get it, and he'll come up with you. He may go ahead of you, and in the beginning, if he does go ahead of you, you stop. You don't let him pull. It's nice if you have a long line. You turn the opposite direction, move in that direction. Call your dog as soon as his eyes come to you. Food, good. The positive marker and food. The basics of dog training are positive markers and negative markers,
Mhm.
and uh, positive markers and negative markers escalate. For me, my positive markers are good, excellent, and then full party. And you never always give one treat. You become boring to the dog. You got to be like a slot machine and pay off. When it does something much harder, you've got to acknowledge it with your excitement. Guys have trouble showing their excitement and showing their emotions, and treat, treat, treat. Uh, and it helps to have a high value treat,
Mhm.
trying different things and seeing what the dog really wants. Got to be more interesting than the distraction. And the same with negative markers that they escalate. Nope, no, and leash pop. For me, a lot of people are not doing. The big conflict in training now is how much correction to give. And the truth is, when people ask me about a prong collar or an e-collar, I say, fine, make sure you get it to fit on your neck. The problem isn't with the dog. You can't expect the dog to do something you haven't trained him and to be under your control at a level, uh, uh, a higher level than you have expected him to. And you advance dogs with 3 Ds: distance, distraction, and duration. And you get the dog doing basic obedience and in the stationary positions of sit, down, stand. Uh, you gradually uh, increase duration. So in the beginning, with the dog sitting next to you, you just turn your head from side to side. And some dogs will break with that. And the second step is to pivot in front of your dog and pivot back. And you start with 1 second and you build up to 2 seconds. You see people jump too quick, and you got to go in small steps. And on down, what could be more comfortable for a dog? Rapidly, my friend John Naroditsky, rapidly, he has his beginner dogs on a down and stay for half an hour while the owners are watching TV. And
Mhm.
break, the dog is brought back, put in a down stay again, and uh, the secret of dog training is perseverance, consistency, and intent. And intent, I mean your intent. Your dog knows your intent instantly. As soon as
Mhm.
you think something and feel something, dogs are all about body language and they're masters of it. When they first came into the fire as a wild uh, dog, they uh, they were there for scraps, and uh, and then early people discovered their value at hunting and in alerting at night when the predator was coming in, and the relationship started with people. And when times got tough, they ate the dogs. So
Mhm.
dogs learned that their survival was based on body language, and it sticks with them today still.
Right.
I started collecting art showing the dog of the period, and there's a range in the old Bulldog from cobby, bully little ones to
Mhm.
rangier, long-legged ones, and and bulldogs look different ways, different periods. And bull baiting started around 1100 AD, was made illegal in 1835. And originally the bulls were loose and running through the town, and it was a big spectacle. And the dogs were probably jerking their head and flipping them onto their side. So they were a much bigger dog. Later, they had a collar on the bull and a rope to an anchor in the ground. And the dogs were bred smaller and were supposed to grab the bull by the nose, which was the only place to control the bull. The farther they got from the nose, the worse they were. And they would hold on until the bull got tired of smashing them onto the ground and stepping on them. And when he finally put them down on the ground, that's when the dog won. And as the dogs came, the bulls would throw them 40 feet in the air, and they'd break their backs when they'd land, and the owners would run and try and catch them. There's some way they broke their fall with a bamboo pole. I still haven't figured that out, and I've never seen art showing it. So dogs were used on bulls. They were used on bears. The bears, they had a collar and lines to pulleys on the wall. And actually, where Shakespeare was performed in London during his life, there was a bear baiting ring there. And actually, years ago, I got to go to London and see the place. There was a building there now, but it's dockside and, where the old theater was.
Wow.
That's what the old dogs were bred for. It was a cruel thing, but you have to realize that at the time, a third of a major city could be killed in a witch hunt, that there were bad things being done to people. The English were not as big on witch hunting, although they did it, as some of the European countries and places were decimated by that. So, we looked at animals differently, and they rationalized it about if the bull died with adrenaline pumping, the meat would be more tender. But really, I think it's probably the opposite. You don't want adrenaline pumping, and actually with the valuable tuna, I'm a fisherman,
Mhm.
and when they build up lactic acid, uh, the Japanese buyers core the fish and they look at the meat and they can tell if it's they call them burned,
Mhm.
and they're worth much less money. At the dock they decide what the fish are worth, and so. Uh, for big tuna, you get them to the boat, and if you fought them for a while, you revive them until they're totally revived, and then you kill them,
Mhm.
and the meat's more valuable. So
So,
they're all from the original dog. So they're half English Bulldog, 1/6 Pit Bull, 1/6 Bull Mastiff, 1/6 American Bulldog,
mhm.
and the conformation I'm after is like a smaller hybrid American Bulldog.
Mhm.
Judged American Bulldog some, and I've apprenticed with some of the best judges, and they were wonderful and really, really educated me on judging. I'm very beholden to the NKC judges who took me on as an apprentice, and I apprenticed 9 times and learned a lot. And I
Mhm.
did that before I came back to judging. And I really like the hybrid ABs. Um, and I'd like a smaller version.
Mhm.
My problem was the people who did come to me and I was hoping to have helped me went their own way shortly afterwards, and they knew from the beginning that you had to X-ray hips.
Yeah.
That was a danger with English bulldogs, and they didn't want to go to the expense. They didn't want to know. For me, that's stupidity.
Mhm.
You're gonna make a tragedy for a family down the road because their dog is going to be 3 years old and not able to walk.
Mhm.
So why would you not want to check that and when you can just do a hip X-ray and avoid it and not breed a dog with bad hips? But yeah, the amazing thing today is that it's only a couple years ago I saw X-rays of a 2-week-old puppy, and the joints have tons of space between them. The joints are not together at all. And
Mhm.
there's so much that can happen that can cause a bad problem. We don't really know. We know there's a genetic component to hip dysplasia, and that's why we X-ray. But
Mhm.
a lot can be done from poor rearing, over exercising a puppy, letting them do steps, that can turn into bad joints that isn't genetic. So, that's very interesting. And I'd never seen the X-rays until recently. And it's shocking to see how open the joints are. And for that reason, you shouldn't shouldn't work a dog hard till it's more mature. I've seen wakeful dogs that were worked too hard too early, and it's not a good thing for the dogs. And uh, steroids aren't good for dogs, just like they're not good for people. And I've seen them used on dogs too. 1 year, start lightly, not put real pressure on them till a year and 3/4, 2 years. They're pretty mature.
Mhm.
Different dogs and different breeds mature at different ages. But I would not work them early. And for those who are going to neuter, never neuter a dog until the joints are mature, because they need the hormones for the for the maturing process. So, for shelter animals, we have to do it while we have them. And with cats, we start at 3 pounds. At three
Mhm.
pounds, you neuter them, and you just have to do it because there's different considerations. But if you want to do something for the health of the animal, I would not neuter a bulldog till 2 years old. And for a female, yeah, you're going to go through two heats, but yes, you have to do it. It's important for joint health. 80 pounds is max. I don't want a big dog. And, historically, if you have a dog stuck on a bull's nose and they're a big dog, they're likely to be a parting of the ways, part of the nose comes off. The dogs were not real big. They would just stayed on and
Mhm.
did quit. So I don't want a real big dog. And, we have a as complete a standard as possible. I want to leave a legacy that can be followed. And, I've got a great board of directors of wonderful breeders, both here and in Europe. And we're strict about breeding approval. And now we've added genetic testing too. And some genetic problems don't turn up until the dogs are 8 to 14, and uh, whole lines have these genetic problems, and nobody knows because the dogs are dying before the problem comes out. I had a neighbor with a German Shepherd, and I didn't realize it, but the dog was dragging its rear end because of a genetic problem, uh, DM, degenerative myelopathy, where they
Mhm.
lose the use of their muscles, and it starts in the back end. And now I realize it wasn't hips, that this dog had a spinal problem, and
Mhm.
it's genetic, and it can be rapidly bred out because it's recessive. The recessive problems, and with gene testing the way it is now, you can get your sample from puppies at 2 weeks old, and with some gene tests, you can have the result in another week. And with recessive, you'll have clears, you'll have carriers, and you'll have affected. And, you can pick your freeze and only use those for breeding. But again, people are driven by the money, and they don't want to know. They're going to be losing a percentage of their income from the dogs. The important thing is the proof is in the pudding. A very good trainer here told me that, and we're talking. The only thing two dog trainers agree about is the other one's wrong. And he said the proof is in the pudding. About using an e-collar, and his dogs are really good. And again, he's not lighting them up. The people who just have a problem like your dog with its aggression and slap an e-collar on and shock him hard when he's being aggressive, they should not, they're not dog trainers, and they shouldn't have an e-collar. And the same, a lot of owners, most owners are not capable of properly using an e-collar. They're not, they, they shouldn't use a prong collar because they'll put one on and let the dog pull with it. That's not what it's for. It's for loose leash and then a correction and then slack lead.
Mhm.
And for a lot of people, a prong collar, the dog pulls the older owner down onto their front. You need power steering, but it's got to be done properly. Some dogs, you put a prong collar on, they stop pulling. They know it's on right away. I've had shelter dogs that did that. Most shelters, you can't put a prong collar on the dog. But I
Mhm.
was with a head of behavior at the big shelter here, and we worked the dog, and he videoed it, and I showed him. We put the prong collar on. He had tried all the other techniques. Stopping, when the dog pulls, stopping, going the other direction, just 20 minutes, no effect. You know, put the prong collar on, the dog knew it was on, never really gave a correction. The dog started working for me. You know, the shelters here in Florida, 200 dogs, all pit bulls. I mean, they can call them whatever they want, but they're pit bulls or pit bull crosses, and they're just poorly bred pit bulls mainly. I said,
Mhm.
little dogs. Well, the empty glass booths at the front, you know, they get adopted right away. But you know, I saw a case 2 weeks ago with a wonderful, beautiful dog. You know, I can't help but look at these pit bulls and, you know, see something with really nice conformation, beautiful dog. And it was in a pen, getting to know potential adopters, and they were ideal. You know, the guy clearly had a past military background, and tall, big guy with, you know, good posture, and his partner was, you know, very respectable looking woman.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, I had hopes for him, and then I saw the dog was highly dog aggressive. I was surprised they had it up for adoption.
Mhm.
It was heartbreaking for me. The dog, a good trainer could bring the dog around, but this dog was trouble. And I saw a dog a week ago. My friend sent me a picture of, uh, it was a blind little terrier, a jag terrier, very aggressive, you know, great hunting dog, but uh, and he showed me somehow it had gone up the bookcase, and had the insulation down, and was trying to get through the floor to get to his other two dogs up above. I mean, that dog was aggressive. I mean, how it got to the top of the bookcase was amazing just by itself, and the dog was blind.
Wow.
Some of my first generation dogs were a handful. I had a
Mhm.
dog that was on a stainless steel cable, and the harness didn't break, the cable broke, and he attacked a D10 Caterpillar bulldozer, and he had the upper track in his mouth, all 4 feet off the ground. He was moving along with it, and luckily the operator saw him before it came around. He ran over his head, and that dog had more courage than sense. He thought he was winning. You know, he had
Right.
all we can think is it said CAT on the side, and so yeah,
Yeah.
so, you know, dogs like that, you can't find a home for. You know,
No.
they may be good for not quitting in the pit, but they're not good for neighborhoods, for families, you
Mhm.
know, temperament. If there's got to be a problem, the dog's got to be overly friendly. For me, the pit bull is perfect shape, healthy dog.
Mhm.
Conformation, you know, the length of their back, their height, uh, the angulation of their legs. For me, they're you can't get more healthy than that. I mean, you may have a specialized need that you need a coursing hound that's got to be shaped like it is, but for an everyday dog, and for a dog that can change direction quickly, uh, that's agile, you know, they're ideal. When I got started in dogs, you didn't see pit bulls. You know, they were kept behind closed doors and in the woods and in basements. I remember dogs in Harlem that, you know, were in fighting condition. They look like skin and bones when they're ready to fight. And they had to wear coats, and they weren't causing problems because they weren't in the general public. And the
Right.
problem was when every 16-year-old kid in an inner city neighborhood wants one, and uh, and the dog's cute and handled improperly, most likely, and gets to be a year old, and it's a pain in the ass, and it goes to his uncle or his grandmother, and then goes to the shelter. And that's where the 200 dogs come from that are at the shelter where I work on Saturday.
All
Um,
right.
you know, and these dogs don't have the temperament of those old fighting dogs. You know, I
Mhm.
found universally universally friendly with people, and you know, they weren't necessarily bred to fight well. They were bred to never quit.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's what it's all about. and it's not a humane thing, but it's been around for ever since two people had dogs, probably. Most of those dogs in the shelter where I go are not especially animal aggressive.
Right.
Wouldn't be for adoption if they were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought I controlled the name Old English Bulldog by copyright. Turns out it had to be trademarked.
Right.
And when I discovered that, uh, if I had trademarked it to enforce it, I would have had to sue other registries in federal court where they are. And I wasn't willing to do that. Um, and so I lost the use of the name. And very few of the lines are doing health screening. So the people who followed me, we took remaining blood and we called the dogs Leavitt Bulldog. You know, people were already calling them Leavitt lines. So uh, and so there's some good bulldog boards. There's a number of alternative bulldog boards. I like the Old English Bulldog Club, the OEBC. OEBC. I, they're supportive and not a lot of arguing. Um, and there's a handful of breeders there that are doing health screening, that are quality dog people. Uh, the majority aren't. I'm sorry, but that's the fact. There's a handful that are, and they're showing the way forward, and people are not flocking to them because doing things right is expensive. And culling dogs and not using them for breeding it puts you back years and is expensive and heartbreaking, and people aren't willing to do it. And the good breeders go all the way from less extreme dogs to pretty bully. There's in Virginia Beach, there's breeders who are doing a great job and have healthy bully dogs that they've health screened and are agile. And you know, I saw a great dog years ago, an English bulldog, and lived on a farm in Virginia. I didn't have a place to use him, but I really wanted to. If he could run 24 miles an hour, and
Wow.
he'd run behind the four-wheeler, the guy'd get to the end, take the dog and throw it in the stream, and he'd come out of the stream, cooled off a little bit, and we'd run him back. And the dog was a great little bulldog, and he was, you know, nice, not fat, obviously, but you know, a great dog and would have been great for breeding. But they're few and far between. I worry, you know, a lot of the breeds have problems now. The bull mastiff used to be healthier, and years ago I found out they were suffering from enlarged hearts. The boxer I would never use because of the cancer danger. Uh, you know, otherwise boxer would have been good for me to use. And in Europe, when you see one with a tail and ears, you don't realize what it is at first. They look like a thin OEB. You know, there's a dog called Lurcher, which is very interesting. And
Yeah.
Lurcher is any dog technically that's half sighthound. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, traditionally in England, it was a poacher's dog. And if the dog saw the owner in town, it was supposed to walk by him and act like it didn't know him because they were a poacher's dog and it's illegal, but they hunted with them at night. And, you know, they were popular around horse farms in the Northeast and probably still are in England some. But interesting crossbred dog. And again, you need something to run. You're going to have to get it from a dog that can run. Yeah, the biggest rule in dog breeding is like breeds like. You know, it's a pretty simple concept, um, but you know that's how I got my dogs to look like the old artwork. And you asked me about what breeds I used, and I picked breeds that I thought would give me a dog that looked like the old artwork. The truth is that you can use the same ratio of breeds with unrelated dogs and get a dog that looks completely different. That
Mm-hmm.
I had pit bulls that were dominant, that grew puppies that looked just like them. I had a bull mastiff female that all her puppies looked just like her. that the only way to know is to do the breeding and try it and see what you get.
Mhm.
But that's the truth of the matter for trying to create something. On any of these things for dog breeding and for dog training, um, talk is cheap. That's
Yeah,
one thing. You know, you got to see the dog and see how they're doing, and the same with training. You
yeah,
know, talk is just talk. You know, here's the dog. You know, let's do something, and let's see what you can do with the dog. And you know, training the people is harder, and it's just so rare that you get a student that that can take it in and do it. You know, the way I train is I tell the person, they try it, you know, whether it's stationary position or moving, uh, they fail. I take the dog does it for me. They see how I do it, and then I give the leash and we try it with them and me walking them through. And it's amazing how few people can get it. It's just they close themselves off and think the dog can't be any better. It's not true. And then when you show them, it still doesn't go into their head. You know, I train with a group in Maryland, and just I never get tired of watching the beginner classes and seeing how my wonderful mentor brings the people forward and big on proofing, you know, getting the dogs working, and then real quick hitting them with distraction to increase their capabilities. And you know, I see people, and guys are worse than women usually. Uh, you know, training and the vet profession's been pretty well taken over by women. Used to be all guys, and
hmm
all the clinics I go to, other than the protection ones, are mostly women.
Like if somebody was thinking about starting a breeding program, do you think it's imperative that they also start to learn how to train dogs and learn, uh, for lack of a better term, dog psychology, etc.?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, how can you be a complete dog person without it? And you know, the first thing when I see a dog is I want a demo. And every good trainer's got a demo dog. If you don't, you know, I mean, maybe your dog died and you got one coming, but you know, I want to see what you can do. And so, yeah, and training has come so far. There's resources like Blue Dog. Blue Dog has these DVDs which show you dogs' methods of communicating with other dogs.
Mhm.
And I use these with shelter dogs sometimes. Some people are really good at it. And you know, there's calming signals that you can use with dogs, turning your head side to side slowly, licking your lips. You know, there are various things. And, you know, like going into a shelter where the dogs are all keyed up, usually, you can calm a dog down by using dog language. And, you know, most dogs try it with people, and the people don't respond, and the dogs stop trying.
Mhm.
I have a friend who uses those techniques on aggressive dogs and as well with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Training, there's something I'm very interested in. Uh, the premier guy with e-collars is Ballon from Belgium. And he's a great trainer. He's a great teacher. He's a character too. And he does clinics and he comes here to the United States. And he says that to do a perfect sit takes 4 to 6,000 repetitions. And he's developed a technique to get it down to 4 to 600.
Oh,
And he does it with this program he calls NAPOPO, which is negative, positive, positive. And negative in training terms means taking something away, and positive means adding something. So you can have positive, you can give a treat, or you can have positive punishment, means you're giving punishment. So, you know, that's how the terms technically are. And there's a quadrant of training. You know, if you really get into training, you come upon this first. So his technique is he uses negative first. And what I saw him use negative was uh, to teach the dog. It's called forced retrieve. So you give the dog a dowel into its mouth. The Shih Tzu people don't want to talk about this, and the obedience people don't either because they do sometimes in cruel ways. So you give them the dowel, and the obedience people, the old timers, will pinch the ear. Well, first the dog drops the dowel, and the handler pinches the ear and keeps pinching it until the dog picks up the dowel, and then they release the pressure. So that releasing, taking the pain away is negative.
Mhm.
It's the negative. With an e-collar, you do it the same way. Give them the dowel, they drop the dowel, you do continuous stimulation, tick, 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 at a low level, not pain, not punishment, just buzz, 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 until the dog picks up the dowel, and then you stop the buzzing.
Mhm.
You're negative. You're taking the electric away, and then you hit them with two positives, and the dogs learn quicker. Very interesting, and I want to learn more about it. But you know, a lot of the top trainers I know are all about this NAPOPO training. Bart Ballon, Bellon. And
Okay.
he's developed other things for Schutzen, for IPO. He has a remote ball drop in the blinds so that he can reward a dog at a distance. Has a wireless control and drops balls to the dog. A lot of those dogs are ball driven, instead of food.
Right.
But the major rewards for dogs are food, ball, or tug,
Uh-huh.
and they're all used the same way. For me, it's a question of quality.
Right.
So, I used to go to a lot of competitions, and it's amazing to see a national Shipson championship, a national PSA championship. Um, PSA to me is the highest level of protection, other than no pads.
Mhm.
Uh, their obedience at the top level is done with 8 guys in padded suits screaming at the handler and dog and rushing in, and the dog wants nothing more than to bite him. And so it's the ultimate distraction. In the protection phases, they're doing things that are super hard for the dog. Like they'll put up a tent and it'll be dark inside with the whole floor covered with obstacles, and they'll send the dog in to get the decoy from bright light into dark. It's a really hard thing. Um, the decoys have got uh, milk bottles with pennies and palm fronds and other things that are very hard for the dog to get through. So, for me, uh, I like seeing the quality of the dogs, going to agility and seeing what the good agility dogs can do. This fall, I think I'm going to get to go see the National Police Dog Championship in Holland. To see a whole soccer stadium full of dog trainers is amazing. Uh,
Yeah.
and they're a rough bunch, the trainers.
Right.
Really use some pretty heavy duty techniques. I took pictures before of the training equipment with 50 collars with sharpened nails on the inside. You know, e-collars are outlawed, but they still have those nail collars. And
Mhm.
it's an industry there, and they're turning out these $20,000 Malinois and Dutch Shepherds, and there's buyers for them.
Right.
Interesting. At the national championship, 10 dogs, only 2 of them had papers. They don't care about papers on the Malinois. It's all about performance. I mean, they have the bloodlines, but the 2 were the Dutch Shepherds that had papers. And another thing about that competition, very interesting, you only get to do it once with that dog. So, you may hold them for a year to make sure they're living up to their full potential. You don't get to come back and try it again. So, in answer to your question, I like seeing quality dogs, whether they're mixed breed or not. The AKC a few years ago developed the All American program for mixed breeds.
Mhm.
It's too bad they have to be neutered, but neutered mixed breeds can compete at all AKC working events.
Okay.
So, my little dog, who's 3/4 Boston Terrier, 1/4 Dachshund, uh, she competed AKC and rally and obedience. And in my club, we had a dog that was one of the top rally dogs, form of obedience in the country, a mixed breed. So that's a wonderful thing. So I'm always interested in dogs with drive, dogs that are bred with drive, and attention to the handler, uh, and trainers' methods of introducing drive and contact with the owner.
Mhm.
How to do not put it off, because it's like there's always something keeping you from doing it, but
Yeah.
you got to find a group class
Yeah.
and go.
Yeah.
I go first to check out the trainer before I would ever do one. The people that I work with, I went and watched classes for 2 years. I was it was a short period. I was without dogs for a year and a half, and so I was watching training and then and participated as soon as I could. But there, and you have to watch out. AKC clubs. Uh, Anybody who's titled a dog can teach a class there, so you have to be careful. You know,
Mhm.
I've seen I've seen classes without quality training, but again, you watch and you can see, do they have good rapport with the person, good rapport with the dog? Are they bringing the dogs along? You see it right away. If the dogs are advancing, the dog should always be advancing, and that's what keeps me going. Always going forward. And the way I train in steps, whenever there's a problem, go back a step. So you know what you were doing first, that you started with luring and putting the food on the dog's nose and getting and lifting it up, and their rear end goes down. They learn to sit, and then you stop the luring, and they know sit, and as soon as they sit, good, and food right away. So you're moving forward, and then intermediate reward, using just your voice for some of them, but criteria is important. Criteria is the response from the dog that you'll accept and that you'll reward. So, I have a friend, I watched his methods training aggressive dogs for 2 years, and part of his success is he has high criteria from the beginning. The dog is out of position a little bit, and the first couple of days, you may give him a break, but then they're going to have to sit square to him, and there are ways to do that. You can work along a wall, and when you come to a stop, the dog can't swing its rear end out then. And you should always start with the dog on your left and leash in your right hand. This is a big thing for me because once people get started wrong, it's very hard to change.
Mhm.
Hold the leash on the dog side hand. And if you're using food, then you're using your off hand and twisting your body to feed the dog. And the dogs are all about the position of your shoulders. The agility dogs, they're going in the position of the handler's shoulders. I trained with a former national champion. And, again, I was the only guy. And she said, the dog's going in the direction of your boobs. So, it
Mhm.
couldn't be me, but it's really your shoulders are going the same direction as your boobs. So, really, it can be your shoulders. So, when you're twisting to reward a dog, a lot of dogs scoot behind you, and that's why, because they're reading your body language. So, you hold the leash in your right hand, uh, treat bag on your left side, feeding with your left hand, dog on your left side. And then if you continue training enough, you should have the dog heeling between your legs. And I call it side, where they're heeling on your right side. So the protection dogs are big on this tactical heel, which is the dog's between your legs. And it's really good. You know where the dog is, uh, and the dog's protected to some extent. And, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any kind of uh, advice that you would give to a young a person who's thinking about starting their own breeding program and in their first steps of becoming a real dog man?
Yeah, I mean, with videos like they are and the computer like it is, you can see all the people working, all the famous people. Uh, Bart Bellin has videos. Michael Ellis on the West Coast is a wonderful trainer, a wonderful teacher of people, and you can see how they do it, and they walk you through. For softer stuff, there's a young woman named Kiko who shows you loose leash walking and leave it with a plate full of meat, and these are short videos that you can emulate. Larry Crone is somebody, Krohn, that I've just found. He's a good trainer, and there's internet teaching going on too. Some good trainers where you send videos back and forth and they critique your work. If you can't find a good trainer locally, the hard part is knowing who to follow, and really you can decide that by seeing the trainer's dogs, and if they're happy and working willingly, if they're working at a high level. uh, Janet Dooley in Hanover, Pennsylvania is a top national protection trainer, Australian woman who's here in this country now, and you can see videos of her amazing PSA performances. So there's a lot. The hard thing is finding the right teacher and then working hard and doing what they tell you. And they will appreciate that and give you special attention. Uh, you know, Throw the effort into it. And there's Patricia McConnell's books. Her Family Dog book brings you right through basic obedience training. Gives you like class lessons. Do this. Do this. Here's when to go on to the next stage. So you can do it from a book, but it's very hard to do from a book. I trained my first dogs with the Keeler technique from a book, and I needed a mentor in the worst way. I asked for a demo from a guy who'd been a Secret Service trainer. This was back in the 70s. And I asked for a demo, and he brought his dog out, and he had his helper put on the sleeve. And what he was going to show is he was going to set the dog on the guy, and halfway there he was going to down the dog to show his control. And he set the dog on the guy, and the dog was running, and he said, "Down!" And the dog never slowed up. And ran right by the decoy and ran out of sight. It was the worst demo I had ever seen. And, I was looking for a mentor and a trainer, and it was a big fail. But
Right.
yes, and the main thing is you gotta try.
Hmm.
And you gotta try to find somebody local and find a class. And if you can't do that, you gotta find somebody, an internet class if you have to. Uh, some very good people doing that. And you need somebody's help to show you. Dog training is not obvious.
Hmm.
And there's some simple things you can do that just make it so much better. Loose leash walking, not looking at your dog. The dog should be looking at you. You should be looking ahead and watching the dog in peripheral vision. There's a lot of basic stuff that you need to learn. And again, the big fight now is how much punishment to use. And I struggle with that. Uh, I use with my dog. She never needs a leash correction, and she doesn't get one. With shelter dogs, um, yeah, they need it. I had a very nice guy. It's hard to get shelter dogs out of the run under control because they
Hmm.
come out and they just want to run. And a friend of mine's husband was a volunteer there, and he asked for help, so I showed him, and I took the dog and I went in and out 10 times. By the 10th time, the dog was coming out okay. You just got to put in the time. And he saw me doing it. And at the end, he said to me, "You told the dog no." And I said, "Well, why the fuck wouldn't I tell the dog no?" He
Hmm.
said, "Oh, you're not supposed to tell the dog no." Well, you failed. You failed for 5, 10 years. You know, I just succeeded, and you saw me succeed. With an untrained dog, so what more can I do?
If you were going to start your program with the Leavitt Bulldog today, what would you do different today than you did when you first created it?
That's a hard one. I mean, I would like to do it. I would. It would have been easier to just breed uh, a healthy bulldog, like the one that could run 24 miles an hour, with a friendly uh, staffy bull or pit bull,
Hmm.
depending on the size you wanted. The
Hmm.
problem is to get enough genetic diversity. The rule of thumb is 8 unrelated dogs.
Hmm.
And the Continental Bulldog, we bred 8 unrelated lines because FCI, the World Registry, wanted that. So that took a huge. It'd be hard to do a bulldog pit bull and have 8 unrelated dogs and have enough genetic diversity. There's a vet from Canada called Bragg, Bragg, and he wrote the best uh, the best information I've ever seen on genetic diversity. His breed was Siberian Huskies, and I think the number was 5. I think all of the Siberian Huskies in North America are descended from 5 dogs. So
Okay.
they've got inbreeding problems. And he brought dogs in from Siberia. They were the real thing,
Hmm.
Siberian Huskies. And the Canadian Kennel Club would not allow them to be bred into the breed. So
Wow.
that's started him, and he's got a wonderful series of articles on genetic diversity and how to get it, and outcrosses. And
Hmm.
technically, mongrels should be our healthiest dog. But the interesting thing is, what I found is on crossbred dogs that completely unrelated, 2 different breeds, I still had genetic problems come out right away. So, it's all a crapshoot, and all you can do is try it and see. Glad to help, and you have my email. Get in touch
Yeah.
with me. Anything I can do to help you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Levitt. I really appreciate it. And
Start doing stuff, and everybody listening,
yeah.
time passes, and you know, try and find a program to go with, or if you have to, a book. But it's best if you can find a good trainer. Uh, but there's all kinds of resources out there, and you'll love it, and it'll make things easier in the house too.
Yeah.
Like you're struggling with a dog that's got aggression problems, and that's really the purpose for obedience. It's when you're by the side of the road and the car's coming by, and you want your dog to sit on cue immediately and stay there. And it just makes life so much easier when you open the door. You don't want the dog rushing out. You
Mhm.
have a great opportunity every day. Every time you open a door, my dog is 10 and she's got titles, and every door I come to, she sits until she's released, and then we go through the door. And with beginner dogs, they have to sit on the other side. The same with feeding. That the food goes down on the floor. Dog's in a sit. Doesn't break the sit until released. And if they break it, food goes back up. 3 tries, and then the food goes back on the counter. 10
Mhm.
minutes, and try again. You have wonderful opportunities every day to train and advance your dog.
Right. Definitely.
Good, Sean.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you
Nice
very
to
much, sir. Yeah. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
see you.
Bye bye.